morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Khmer Times Ghost Talk. Today, our guest is not in our studio today, but he's based overseas, and we are talking to him online on a video conference. So our guest today is Dr. Andrew Harris. He's a postdoctorate research associate in Southeast Asia archaeology and numismatics, the study of coin and money. And he based at the National University of Singapore and US. And he has been working on the investigation on the ancient coin production and distribution across Southeast Asia using machine learning. And this is a topic that we're going to focus on today as we talk about the Funan coin and its reflection on Southeast Asia economy. So let's go to our interview with him, Dr. Andrew Harris.
There
Yeah,
we go.
here we go. So thank you so much, Doctor, for agreeing to talk to us. Yes, it's a great honor. Yes, first of all, can you tell us about yourself, just maybe briefly, a little bit?
About myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So I got my PhD from the University of Toronto in 2021.
Okay.
And I've spent the last 10 years doing research in Southeast Asia on a variety of topics, especially Cambodia.
Mm-hmm.
Until 2024, I directed a project at Angkor called the Angkor Vihara Project, which with Apsara National Authority, we excavated ancient vihara or pre-vihara from the 13th to 16th centuries. And that was sort of the focus of my doctoral thesis, as well as work with Apsara in the following years. And since 2022, I've been the primary data collector and interpreter on the From Digital Numismatics to a New History of Ancient Empires project from the National University of Singapore, where we've looked at ancient coinage in the region using both manual analysis as well as automated computer vision analysis of the different coins, and that's allowed us to take a look at where not only how they're produced, but where they eventually were distributed and where they were circulated on the Silk Road of the Sea. So, and I'm also a little bit more about me. I'm Canadian as well. So
Yeah.
that's the other thing.
Sorry, just 1 minute. There's some technical error here. Sorry, give me a
Okay.
minute. Give me a
No
minute.
worries.
I need to put you on the main screen.
Okay, I can do that again.
Yeah. Yes, please. How was your day? Everything okay?
Everything's all good. It's just sort of a basic Monday for us. Means
Okay.
a couple of papers get submitted and some meetings with your boss, and that's about it. Yeah. How about you? How's your Monday?
Actually, my Monday is Sunday because we work on Sunday.
Oh, okay. So you work from Sunday to Thursday, right?
Sunday to Thursday, yeah. Because it's a newspaper, so
Yeah. You need to have the Monday paper ready. I get that.
yeah. Give me a minute. Sorry, I got it wrong here.
No worries.
Yeah. I think I got it right here. And I got my master degree at Lee Kuan Yew. So yeah,
Oh yeah, so you're a
yeah.
Singaporean.
I
Yeah.
study in I'm Cambodia, but I studied in Singapore.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm at NUS right now, but Lee Kuan Yew, Lee Kuan Yew, you mean the School of Public Policy here?
Yeah. I
Okay, so
got
you're an NUS grad. Okay.
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. How do I do it? Okay, I think this is the right thing. I'm gonna show it here.
When did you graduate?
2018.
2018. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you did your bachelor's in Cambodia?
Yeah, I got a bachelor in Cambodia.
Oh
I'm
yeah, cool.
I'm working on my PhD right now, but I doubt I will finish it because I never have any time to do anything.
Where are you doing your PhD?
Yeah, I'm doing my PhD in communication right now.
In Cambodia as well?
It's in UK, but it's mostly online. I did it at
Oh yeah, what university?
Lim Kok Wing,
Oh, cool.
Lim Kok Wing University. Yeah. How do I? Hmm, have to make it too bigger. Okay, I think that's it. Okay. Bye-bye.
Perfect. All right.
Sorry, Doc. Yeah, please, can you tell us about yourself again?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Canadian. I'm a postdoctoral research fellow at the National University of Singapore. I have been working in Southeast Asia for the last 10 years on various archaeological projects, one of which was my PhD, which I got from the University of Toronto, which was a collaborative project between uh, myself and the Toronto with Apsara National Authority at Angkor, where we excavated
Mhm.
ancient Buddhist vihara in Angkor Thom, which I've now been a co-director with Chai Rachna at Apsara Authority for 4 excavation seasons from 2019 to 2024. And the project I'm working on with NUS is from digital numismatics to a new history of ancient empires, where we're looking at the production, spread, and generally what ancient coins can tell us, both using sort of looking at each coin, but also through digital methods, through computer vision methods, and how we would sort them to kind of streamline the work process. So it's been a cool combination of excavation work in Cambodia as well as a lot of digital humanities. And we've been alongside Apsara Authority on the digital numismatics project. We work with the Sasora Museum of Economy and Money here in Phnom Penh,
Mhm.
as well as the Fine Arts Department in Thailand and the Ho Chi Minh City History Museum in Vietnam.
Yes. So why are you interested in this topic, the coins? Why is it interested to you?
So, what's kind of cool about coins is that they're a specific episode in the history of Southeast Asia. It's
Mhm.
not well recorded in history. It's not necessarily well recorded in the archaeological record, apart from a few excavations like at Ak Eo in Vietnam and Utong in Thailand. And it's also a period where after that there really is no coinage in these regions because regional powers like Angkor or Chenla before it didn't use currency.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
what can this tell us about the Silk Road of the sea? What can this tell us about maritime routes? And how are all of these coins being found in places when they weren't necessarily reflecting sort of a central state apparatus, when instead they were sort of more like the US dollar or Spanish silver dollar of their day? And really, what interests me is what why are coins moving around in this region, but why are they not afterwards? What is this
Hmm.
specific episode of history, and what can we learn from where the coins are found?
Okay. So in Cambodia, I have done a study on the Cambodian coins before, and we have some debate argument, like debate to argument when we start using coins.
Mhm.
So what about you? What has been your findings so far?
So the coins that are found in Cambodia are, we call them Funan coins. In Thailand, they're called Devar Bati coins, or in Myanmar, they're called Mon Pew coins, and all the designs come from one place. They come from northern central Myanmar or southern Myanmar, and they were originally produced, or what we think was originally produced, for use as sort of the reflection of the wealth of a certain power. So think
Mm-hmm.
of you think of US, or you think of the Cambodian real today. it is valued based on what's in the national bank. And so there would have at some point been this sort of measure of this is what silver, and it is silver, almost all the silver to make these coins came from a specific area of the Shan states in northern Myanmar.
Oh,
But
okay.
what is the weight of the silver? Where does it come from? And then over time, this was the fourth century or the 300 to 400 CE when this began. These coins were sort of they moved with trade, and what we think is they became much less of a centralized state apparatus and more of a silver weight, like sort of a weighted silver value, like a silver bullion almost.
Mm-hmm.
And what's found in Cambodia is a lot of local imitations of these coins that were elsewhere. And so you have sort of this weighted standard symbol of value. And all the coins that are found across Southeast Asia have similar measurements, similar diameters, similar weights, similar thicknesses. And so you have this idea that okay, so this is the state of what's called Halin, which is in northern Myanmar. They set the value, and then as it was disseminated over several centuries, people acknowledged its value and may have been able to trade with the silver for other goods, for any goods around the region, whether this was in silver ingots that were weighted the same or the specific coins that come from Funan. And those coins from Funan, Dvarbati, Monpu, whatever, they have a very specific set of symbols. They have a rising sun on the front,
Mm-hmm.
which is emblematic of royal authority. At one point, according to Burmese chronicles, the few kings of the north were called the Sun Kings of the Sun. And then the back is Srivatsa, and that's a sort of ancient and iconic symbol that reflects possibly the goddess Shri, but it's a very ancient symbol. And on either side is a royal throne called a Vajrapita and a swastika, which is a Hindu Buddhist symbol of fortune and prosperity underneath the moon and stars. And so this symbol was actually imported, regardless of whether the coins were actually brought or shipped from Myanmar or whether they were manufactured in Cambodia to kind of have participation in this system that used them.
Mm-hmm.
So interpretations are such that this symbol, these coins, were not necessarily created in Cambodia as a symbol, but they were certainly recognized through a multitude of different Southeast Asian peoples that came through the region and would have used them, especially when you look at what's found at Io to the south, which is connected to the major sort of Funan polity in Cambodia, Angkor Bray, via a canal.
Yeah.
And you find a lot of them there, but those ones look like they were actually imported rather than locally manufactured, which is what we find at Angkor Bray.
Okay. So where do you think this coin were originated from? It's not Cambodian, so it must be somewhere.
Well, that's what I was saying before is that they were from the design is from Myanmar, the weight is from Myanmar, but the coins themselves were probably made in Cambodia.
Mm.
Were probably imitating coins that came through Archaeology or came through other polities associated with the kingdom of Funan, which was the earliest Indianized kingdom in the region of Cambodia today. So the coins at the Sasora Museum, for example, they all come from Angkor Bray. They all come from this sort of walled settlement that would have or is thought to have likely been an imperial center or a royal center rather than a center of trade like Ageo. So they were, as you know, they were found in 2011, likely during the construction of hydro cables in Angkor Bray at the area of Khon La Lan, which is near the west gate or the west or east gate of Angkor Bray, and they were found in a ceramic jar, in a ceramic vessel.
Mm-hmm.
And as they were disseminated, they were found in the Russian market. They were recovered by the National Bank, and originally they were thought to be only about 40 or 50 left, but that has actually increased to about 100.
Mm.
And the reason that we're starting to think that these specific coins were locally produced is that they were produced differently than other coins. So in Myanmar, there's a technology called dye striking or using dyes. So essentially, you have sort of not molten metal, but softer metal, and you have an obverse and a reverse face with an image that's been carved on it. And so you smack it, and then the image imprints on the metal. And so you have a silver coin. A lot of them in Cambodia, though, were die cast or cast, which means that they were essentially poured, there's molten silver poured into a mold, and then they were created en masse like that. So that's actually, we originally thought that was very unique to Cambodia. But as it turns out, it might be actually unique to the sphere of cultural influence in Funan, because there's a lot of molded pendants and amulets and things that are imitations of Roman coins, or even earlier Burmese coins called Konchrivatsa coins that are found along the isthmus in Thailand, especially at a place called Kong Tom on the other side of the peninsula. So what we're starting to think is that this is a product of multiple influences. So you have the Indic influence, the Burmese influence coming from the west, but you may have the Chinese influence of coin casting coming from the east. So it's a really unique, interesting sort of synthesis of two dominant civilizations that are both impactful on Cambodia's early history.
This is really new to know that the Burmese influence on Cambodia. Um, what?
It's not necessarily Burmese, right? It's the kingdoms in the area of modern Myanmar. So these would be called Pumon kingdoms after the
Oh, okay.
ethno
Yeah.
cultural groups there. So the Burmese are really only a factor at around the time of the rise of Bagan in the ninth century. So me
Mhm.
saying Burmese or Myanmar, that's sort of an apocryphal term because it's just the area of the modern state.
Yeah. What so far? What are the oldest coins, Funan coin you have found so far, and it date to what year?
So in terms of finding coins, it's actually not quite clear because a lot of coins are found in contexts that they were deposited later. So people may have had these coins for centuries, and then they would have deposited them if they're in situ. A lot of them are not, and I'll talk about that in a minute. They would have deposited them as maybe votive offerings at religious monuments. You find a lot of them in Thailand that have been placed at the foot of stupas. And this could have happened uh, a few years after their manufacture, or could have been hundreds of years later. So we know where they ended up, but we don't necessarily know when they were manufactured. In Angkor Bray, the Konla land hoard is actually probably one of the most contextually accurate finds, even if it was looted and then disseminated through various antiquity dealers, because it was from an area within Angkor Bray that it's thought to have been, or at least this is what the Sasora Museum believes, and I'm tempted to believe it as well, that this was deposited during a period of instability. Because when you deposit a hoard, you're putting all of your money in the ground, and you expect to come back for it later. But
Mhm.
in this case, people never came back for it. So the thought is that whoever deposited the hoard, they would have been they may have been a period of instability with the collapse of Funan and the rise of Chenla, which sort of occurred in the 7th century. So it's thought that the hoard deposition, not necessarily manufacture, but the deposition occurred at some point in the 7th century.
Mhm.
As for the coins from Myanmar, the problem with Myanmar's archaeological record is that so much of it has been looted over the last 50 years, if not earlier. And so most of the coins that are known from Myanmar actually appear in auction catalogs or in private collections where people are not as willing to give provenance. So you lose that. And so, because of the sort of current conflict and continuous conflict in Myanmar since the 1970s, there has been no minting site that's ever been found. So we don't know when this started. We can only estimate. We can
Mhm.
only estimate when. And so you say, all right, 4th century to 9th century or something in there. But at least the Konla land hoard was, we know a little bit better.
Okay. So by studying this coin, what can you draw as an implication, as a reflection of the economy at that time period?
We can interpret that the economy of maritime Southeast Asia before the rise of Bagan and Angkor and all of those insular agrarian non-trading empires was probably based on silver,
Hmm.
but not in the way that it would have been one state that was centralized and issuing a currency. It would have been currency circulating. This is a symbol of value. in places like Lopburi and Angkor, they were minting these coins probably from silver, and to sort of replicate value that way. And so we can tell not only that this was a symbol of value, but we can tell it was a widely spread symbol of value that may have changed in its interpretation over the centuries. So between the fourth and the seventh century, say when Funan is a polity, when there's numerous sort of Mondavar centers along the rivers in Thailand, when these early few kingdoms in Myanmar are manufacturing these coins, this was something that could have been exchanged for any number of goods. But over time, as value changes and the idea of value changes, the coins may have changed from value to something of luxury. Like, for example, a lot of them have holes that are pierced in them, which means that people may have worn them as amulets or necklaces. Mm-hmm. And so the silver value was in the fact that they're an old artifact and that they're an old item that's reflective of some sort of past prestige, or the symbols on them are significant to people who know the Hindu Buddhist worldview and the significance of, say, a Srivatsa or the rising sun. And you actually find tombs in northern Thailand where these coins are placed as grave goods, and it's likely that these date far later than when they were circulated in maritime trade. So you have a shifting sense of value here over time. But when Angkor was a major center in Funan, these were likely still symbols of value that were circulated and exchanged or imitated to sort of adhere to that value and function in that economy.
Okay, so you have, from what you have studied so far, I mean, you have not quite a comprehensive study on this topic. So is there like any space for the other who are interested in this topic to join the research? Is there like many research statement out there on this topic?
It's surprising how little there is, and there's a couple of reasons for that. There's a couple of scholars who published on these coins extensively in the 1980s and 1990s, including Pamela Gutman and Robert Wicks. And the last major study on this was actually out of the Sassora Museum by Jean-Michel Gauder and Guillaume Epinal, who published on the coins that were found in Khon La, and they published a lot on the previous work that had been done by numismatists, the studies of coins. But the problem with that is that a lot of these numismatists were not necessarily engaging with museum collections; they were engaging with private collectors. So a lot of private collectors would publish their collections, but they wouldn't know exactly where they came from. They would be like, "Oh, I got them from a dealer in the 1970s or 1980s," which is by all accounts is illegal because of the UNESCO statute in 1970, where you're not supposed to be trading in ancient artifacts. But for some reason, coins are seen as an exception to this rule for whatever reason. I think it's just because a lot of coins have been circulating within private collections for centuries. We try to do better. And I think this is where new scholarship comes in, is that archaeological reports in Thai and Burmese indicate huge numbers of coins that have been found or identified or been brought by villagers who looted them and kind of said, you know what, we should probably not keep these. So despite the fact that the majority of scholarship that gets cited is in English, a huge amount for local people and for local archaeologists is set to be published. And it all depends on whether they want to, whether it's a lot of archaeology in Southeast Asia is done by governments, and they don't necessarily publicize their results, and that's their prerogative. I have no issue with that. But it certainly would expand this, and there's been a lot of good master's theses on this topic, especially one by a woman out of, I forget what university she is, but she did a master's thesis on it in Thailand, and she publicized a number of coin collections from the Thailand's fine art department. But based on the fact that we've published a couple of papers now. We published one that the Sassora Museum has publicized on our digital methods on the computational side of our project. And we published that in October. And we're about to publish an article in Antiquity, which is one of the major archaeological volumes or archaeological journals. And what we keep saying in these articles is that what we have is really only what exists now, and there's so much to do. For example, there's a huge amount of scholarship that could come out of Myanmar. there's really not that much aside from Angkor Bray that's come out of Cambodia, despite the fact that reportedly there's sometimes some of these coins found in the Mekong. So there is a huge amount to do for any local scholars or any students who want to keep going with this project. And one of the, I mean, we've also introduced another dimension into the project. We've introduced dye studies, which means, or even minting studies, which means that we can look at a collection of coins and see which ones were matched from the same dyes or molds and see where they ended up. And that's a huge step for us. And that's something that I presented at Sasoro back in January, is that we have matches between coins with provenance. All like there's a match between a coin found in the Ganges Delta in Bangladesh and one found in the Mekong Delta. So they would have been manufactured in the same spot in Halian, but come down the Irrawaddy River and end up in different places. And so it's a very cool sort of site history. We've also found a match between one in the collection of the National Museum in Bangkok and one that was found in a hoard near in Nakhon Si Thammarat province. And even in Angkor Bray, one of the reasons we realized that they were casting coins was because we had, of the Kon La Lan hoard that survived, we had 67 coins from the same apparatus to use to mint them. And so we took it to Robert Wicks and said, because he goes, this is far too many coins from a single die to be surviving. Like this, we've never even seen this even in, like barely even in Roman currency. And he goes, take a look at them again. These are molded. These are come from a cast mold. And we go, okay, now Cambodia, we now know that in early Cambodia, there was a new way of minting. Mm-hmm. So this feels like the tip of the iceberg. And, local scholars can take what we've done and what's been done by others and what's been done by archaeological surveys and government officials and bodies and expand on this and say, not just we have isolated examples of coinage, but what's the whole corpus? What is Thailand and Myanmar's collections compare? Well, what compares with Cambodia and Vietnam? And I know these are sometimes sensitive comparisons given modern borders, but the ancient world doesn't work. The ancient world doesn't work like that.
So. Yes. So last question here. So personally, as a scholar in this topic, what is your personal secret of the universe? What do you want to what question that you want to that you really want to answer when it's come to this topic?
I think what is the role? I mean, we're looking at this. What's the role of coinage in this economy before Angkor? This is a pre-Angkorian. I mean, Angkor gets all the attention. It's the great big UNESCO site. I've worked there. It's majestic, but Cambodia had 800 years, if not more, of history, and then maybe even 600 years more of history where it was building temples and being part of sort of local trade and amassing wealth. What is happening here and how was wealth defined? Was it defined by silver? Was it defined by power? Was it defined by temples and sort of centralization of power like it was during Angkor and Chenla? How is wealth measured in this period? And how can it help us understand how people were trading? And I mean, the one thing that really gets overlooked is what people are doing in the maritime silk routes, as they call them. Everybody draws attention to what's going overland because of all the sort of colonialist narratives with the Silk Road and camels through deserts and things like that. But what's even more fascinating is what people are doing on the ships and how these processes truly led to the development of temple-based civilizations and temple-based city-states that we find during this period. So I think understanding trade helps us unlock that a lot more.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you so much I think I have taken enough of your time. And thank you for talking to us today. Yeah, I wish you all the best and good luck on your work.
Thanks. Are you and just so I get a sense of sort of timing, when are you thinking of publishing something on this?
Yeah, we will do a video on this. Yeah, I think we finished it already. We will do a video on it, and I will write a story on it as well.
Yeah. I was talking
next week or something. Yeah.
I was talking to Blaise Kilian, and he asked me just to ask you to take a look at what's going to get written just before it goes out, if that's okay.
Yes, that's okay.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Because 20, we going to celebrate the anniversary of the reintroduction of our currency. So
I
that's why
heard,
we are
yeah.
doing this. Yes, thank you so much, doctor, and we wish you all the best. Thank you so much.
No
Yeah,
problem. I hope to hear from you soon. Take care.
yeah, take care. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.